I was left alone at the nursing home on Christmas. Then the nurse handed me a letter that changed everything. I wore my red sweater and waited by the window all Christmas Day. My son didn't call, no one came. I ate alone while the other residents laughed with their families. Then a nurse walked in and handed me a letter. It wasn't from my son, but it was from someone I did not expect to still be around. Before I begin my story, I just want to say thank you for listening to me pour my heart out. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. I love hearing from you, and if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, it helps me more than you know. Now let me tell you what really happened. Christmas morning used to smell like nutmeg and orange peel. My late husband used to bring in a little tree from the market, all crooked and still dripping from the morning frost, and I'd spend the whole afternoon pretending it wasn't the ugliest thing I'd ever seen. He'd hum a tune while I basted the ham. Even when times were hard, the house felt full. Even when I only had one gift to give, it felt like I was giving the whole world. But this morning, when I woke up to the dull hum of the hallway outside and the fluorescent lights buzzing above my head, all I could smell was the faint bleach the nurses used to wipe down the doorknobs. It was Christmas, and I was alone. I got up slowly. The stiffness in my knees reminded me it had rained last night. The pain curled low and stayed there like it was waiting for me to beg it to leave. I didn't, I just breathed through it and reached for my sweater. I had chosen the red one the night before and laid it neatly over the chair. I didn't have any holiday pins left, those had been packed away when I moved in here. I wasn't given much time to choose what came with me. They said the place would be good for me, that I'd be safer here, with people who could take care of me. As if I hadn't raised my son with my own 2 hands, stitched his coats, wiped his nose, stayed up nights when he had the flu and no insurance. But I didn't argue. I nodded and let them sign the papers. The dining hall was already half full by the time I made my way in. Wheelchairs lined up like a slow parade. Some of the residents had visitors, sons and daughters leaning down to press kisses on wrinkled foreheads, grandkids giggling too loud, holding gifts that rattled when they shook. I nodded politely at a few of the aides. One of the newer nurses gave me a warm smile as she poured orange juice into little plastic cups. I found my usual seat near the window that faced the parking lot. Every now and then a car would pull in, headlights off, tires crunching the slush. I kept my eyes there longer than I meant to. A part of me, the part one tries to silence, hoped one of those cars was my son and his wife. Maybe they'd walk in holding a pie or one of those gift bags with tissue paper sticking out like little party flags. Maybe they'd surprise me, tell me they wanted to have lunch with me in the common room, maybe take me outside for some fresh air. But they didn't come. By 11 o'clock, most of the visitors had taken their loved ones to their rooms. There was soft piano music playing from a speaker overhead. I could hear someone in the hallway unwrapping a gift, the tearing paper echoing like applause. I took a few bites of the scrambled eggs they served. They were rubbery but warm. I didn't complain, I never do. One nurse passed by again and touched my shoulder gently. "Anything I can get you, miss?" she asked. I smiled and shook my head. "No, sweetheart, I'm just enjoying the view." She smiled back, but I could tell she saw through it. She had that kind of heart, that kind of knowing. I stayed in the dining hall longer than I needed to. I didn't want to go back to my room, not because it was uncomfortable, but because it reminded me of the space they put you when you're no longer anyone's priority. I decorated it with what little I had, a photo of me and my late husband from when our son was little, a crocheted blanket I kept folded at the end of my bed, and a small framed card that read, "Joy comes in the morning." But joy hadn't come this morning, only stillness. I finally wheeled myself back in around one. I turned on the little TV mounted in the corner. Some black and white holiday movie was playing. 2 actors kissed under fake snow, and the studio laugh track cheered them on like it mattered. I muted it. I didn't want to hear happy voices pretending. I sat there for a while, long enough that the light outside started to shift. The sun was sinking behind the row of leafless trees that lined the rear fence. I heard laughter down the hallway. Someone's family had brought matching pajamas. They were taking photos in the lobby by the fake tree. Then there was a knock, a soft one, not loud, just enough to let me know someone cared to ask permission before entering. I looked up, and there was the nurse again. She held something in her hand. I almost forgot. She said this was dropped off this morning at the front desk. They asked that it be delivered today, specifically today. "It's for me." She held out a white envelope. It had my full name written on it in elegant, careful handwriting, like someone who still practiced penmanship on real paper. I blinked. I hadn't received a real letter in years. Bills, yes. Junk mail, yes. But a real handwritten envelope? My fingers trembled slightly as I took it. Do you know who left it? I asked. She shook her head. Just said they were a visitor, not a relative. But they said you'd know who it was. She smiled gently, gave my shoulder another squeeze, then walked away. I stared at the envelope for a long time before I opened it, not because I was afraid, but because something in my chest had already started unraveling. If my body knew, this wasn't just a card. This was something else. I opened the envelope slowly, almost reverently, like I was unwrapping something fragile. The paper inside was thick and smooth, folded with care. I unfolded it once, then again, and then I saw the first line. Dear. I don't know how to begin this without crying. My heart stopped. The handwriting was neat, slanted to the right, the kind you'd expect from someone raised with real stationery and Sunday thank you cards. I scanned further down the page, and my eyes caught the words. My name is I believe I'm your daughter. My breath caught in my throat. I blinked, unsure if I'd read that right. I read it again and again, each time it landed harder. Your daughter. My daughter. For 56 years I have believed I gave birth to a baby girl who died before I ever held her. That's what they told me. That's what they swore. I was young. Too young. Barely 22 and too scared to ask questions. They said she didn't make it, that the delivery was too rough, that it was better I didn't see her. They didn't let me name her, didn't even let me hold her hand. Now here I was, an old woman in a nursing home holding a letter from a woman who said she was that baby. I looked down and realized my hands were shaking. The letter trembled with them. I gripped it tighter and kept reading. I don't want to overwhelm you. She wrote. But I've spent years wondering who I came from. I always had a feeling something wasn't right. My adoptive parents told me I was a blessing someone else couldn't raise, but last year, after both of them passed, I found my original hospital records. There were discrepancies, dates that didn't match, signatures that didn't look real. And then I found something that led me to believe you never gave me up. I read that sentence 3 times. Never gave me up. It was like someone reached back through time and lifted the weight off my spine, a weight I didn't even realize had grown roots. She went on to explain how she found my name through old church documents, birth registries, and a retired nurse who still remembered the young black girl who had cried herself to sleep the night her baby was taken. That nurse had apparently whispered. She didn't give her up. They took her. She had held on to that. She continued. I searched for years. I hit dead ends. I cried. I yelled. I gave up. And then I started again. A few months ago I finally found a trace of your name at this nursing home. I didn't want to show up unannounced. I didn't want to scare you, so I left this letter hoping you'd read it and remember. I pressed the page to my chest. Remember. I never stopped remembering. I remembered the way the hospital smelled. I remembered the pain. I remembered the cold room. I remembered the nurse with the kind eyes who came in and said, "She's gone, honey. Best you don't see her." I remembered wanting to scream but swallowing it because I didn't know who to scream at. And I remembered how quiet the world got after that. The next line broke me completely. If this is too much, I understand. But if there's even a part of you that wants to know me just a little, I'd love to meet you. Even just once. Even just for 5 minutes. Love always. I covered my mouth with one hand and sobbed quietly. The kind of cry that doesn't explode, it leaks like rain from a roof that's been holding in a storm. I sat in that room alone for what felt like an hour, then I read it all over again. Every single word. When I finally folded it back up, my fingers brushed the envelope. There was something else inside, a photo. I pulled it out slowly. It was her. A woman with deep brown eyes, a round nose, and my jawline. She was smiling, holding a photo of herself as a little girl beside a birthday cake. On the back, she had written, "This is me at age 7. I didn't know your name then, but I think I missed you anyway." I held the photo to my heart and rocked slightly in my chair, whispering her name under my breath like a prayer. For years I had mourned a ghost. Lit candles on the anniversary of a birth I thought had ended before breath. Now here she was, breathing, writing, searching, alive. I stood up slowly with effort and went to the mirror above my dresser. I looked at my reflection. I hadn't really looked at myself in weeks. Maybe months. The woman looking back was tired, yes, but something in her eyes had shifted, lit up. I wiped my face and pressed the photo against the glass. "You found me," I whispered. And for the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like a pause before something beautiful. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed with the letter beside me, tucked under my palm like it might float away if I didn't hold it down. The TV played some holiday movie in the background, but I couldn't tell you what it was about. I wasn't watching. My mind was 30 years back. Maybe 40. Time didn't move in order anymore. It spiraled. My daughter had a name, a life, a face. And now she had me again. I stared up at the ceiling, remembering that hospital room, the sheet over my legs, the machines that beeped but didn't explain anything, the nurse who came in without looking me in the eye and simply said, "She didn't make it." I never asked to see the body. I was 22, unmarried, and barely surviving. No family nearby. No husband beside me. Just shame. Just fatigue. Just a dull ache between my legs and the silence that followed after the birth. I remember thinking, maybe it was for the best. Maybe God was sparing her from my broken life. I was wrong. I wasn't spared. I was robbed. They took her. They took her and never gave me a chance to hold her, to name her, to see who she looked like. I buried that pain deep. Every year on her birthday, I lit a candle. I never told my son about her. How do you tell your son he had a sister who vanished before she was ever his? I eventually tried to build a life. I got a job sewing garments downtown, worked 6 days a week, and raised him as best I could. His father left when he was 10, said he couldn't stand the quiet anymore. I didn't beg him to stay. I didn't have the energy. Everything in me had been stitched together with thread too thin to pull on. I thought I had done enough. I thought I was a good mother, but he never seemed to forgive me for something he never said out loud. Maybe it was the way I hovered, maybe it was how I always made 2 plates instead of 1, or how I held my breath every time someone got sick, like I was waiting for grief to take something else from me. And when he moved me into this home, when he sold my house and dropped me off with a bag and a folded list of my medications, I told myself not to cry. "It's safer here," he said. Safer than what? Than being alone in my own kitchen, then reading the same book 3 times, then waiting for the phone to ring. It wasn't safety he was after. It was silence. He wanted distance, wanted me boxed and placed somewhere with name tags and set meal times. He visited the first month, then stopped. His wife said they were busy with the kids, but I never saw a photo, never got a card. Now here I was, all these years later, reading a letter from the child I was told had died, while the one I raised treated me like a chapter already closed. I finally drifted off to sleep around 3 o'clock in the morning. When I woke, the sun was already high. The nurse aide came in with my breakfast and I didn't touch it. I couldn't eat. I had too much swirling in my chest. My palms itched to write something back, but I didn't know where to begin. So I asked Nina. She came by during her lunch break, sat on the edge of the bed with her hair pulled back in that messy bun she always wore, and listened as I told her everything, the baby, the wife, the letter. She didn't interrupt. When I was done, she reached out and took my hand. "I believe you," she said softly. That was all I needed to hear. "I want to write her back," I told her, "but I want it to be right. I want her to feel what I felt reading her words." "Then start with the truth," she said. "That's what she gave you. Give it back." So I asked her for a piece of paper, real stationery, not printer paper or a notepad from the front desk. She smiled and left the room, then came back with a box of creamy ivory sheets and a fountain pen. "I've been waiting for a good reason to use these," she said. I sat at my little table by the window, unfolded the sheet, and wrote, "Dear Denise, you didn't overwhelm me, you woke me up. I have carried the loss of you for over 50 years. I lit candles for your birthday, not knowing if anyone ever lit one for mine. I've said your name in my head though I was never allowed to say it aloud." I paused there, my eyes already full again, but I kept going. "I didn't give you up. They took you from me. I was young, I was scared, and they told me you didn't survive. I didn't have anyone to fight for me or to even tell me they were lying. Reading your letter was like being handed breath again. I want to see you. I want to hear your voice. I want to know what kind of woman you became, if it's not too late, if you still want to. I am yours always. Love, Mama." I folded it gently, tucked it into an envelope, and sealed it with a hand that hadn't written anything this personal in decades. Nina promised she'd mail it that afternoon. As she walked out the door, I said softly, "You think she'll still want to see me?" Nina turned, eyes kind. "She wrote to a stranger believing it was her mother and she found you. I think that kind of love waits." I looked down at the envelope in my lap. For the first time in my life, I felt seen by the child they said never lived. And for the first time since he stopped calling, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt chosen. The days that followed were different, not just on the outside, but inside of me. The world didn't change, I did. The halls of the nursing home still echoed with the sound of clinking trays and wheezing coughs. The television still buzzed with morning shows. But something in my chest felt lighter, like a long-closed window had finally been cracked open, and the air moving through it was finally fresh. Every morning I checked the lobby, half hoping for another letter. I knew it hadn't been enough time, but still I checked. I sat up straighter when Nina's shift started. My eyes flicked toward the entrance each time the door chimed. I had no shame about it. I had waited 56 years for my daughter. A few more days wouldn't kill me. And then something unexpected happened. He called. It was the front desk nurse who handed me the phone. She looked surprised, as if she hadn't realized I even had family who remembered how to dial in. "Your son," she said quietly. I took the receiver, bracing myself. "Ma." His voice came through thin, crackling, cautious. I didn't respond right away. He cleared his throat. "I just wanted to say Merry Christmas. I'm sorry I didn't come by. Tasha's mom had a fall. It's been hectic." I said nothing. "You get the gift card we sent?" "No," I replied, "but I did get a letter." He paused. I could hear the confusion in his breathing. "Letter?" "Yes," I said calmly, "from my daughter." The silence that followed was dense and clumsy. "I didn't know you had a daughter," he said eventually. "You didn't," I answered, "but I was told she died the day she was born. But she's alive and she found me." Another pause. I wasn't surprised that he didn't say anything sentimental. He never did emotion. He treated feelings like potholes, slowing down only when they couldn't be avoided. "Well," he said awkwardly, "that's something that's..." "Everything," I corrected. He exhaled. "Look, Ma, I didn't call to upset you. Just wanted to say happy holidays." "They already are," I said. And I meant it. He mumbled something about maybe stopping by soon, but I knew he wouldn't. And I no longer needed him to. After I hung up, I sat quietly in my room, letting that conversation settle like dust on the windowsill. For years, I had tried to convince myself that his distance was normal, acceptable, even deserved. I blamed myself for his coldness, wondering if I was too soft, too silent, too demanding without asking for much. But the letter from her had done something irreversible. It reminded me that I was not the problem. I had been a mother robbed of her child, a woman discarded and then forgotten. And now I was being remembered, reclaimed by someone who had every reason to turn away but chose instead to come closer. 3 days after I sent my response, she walked into my room holding another envelope. No words, just a warm smile as she placed it in my hands. This time my fingers didn't tremble. I opened it slowly, savoring every second. Inside was another letter, a little longer than the first. "Dearest Mama, I cried when I read your words. My husband found me in the kitchen sobbing into the bread dough. I didn't realize how badly I needed your voice in my life until I finally heard it. Yes, yes, I want to see you. I want to hug you and look in your eyes and ask you every question I've carried since I was old enough to know I didn't look like the people raising me. I've already booked a flight. I'll be at the nursing center this Friday morning at 10 a.m. I hope that's okay. I couldn't wait any longer. I just want to see you, to sit beside you, to feel real again. All my love, your daughter. ***. I held the paper against my chest and let out a sound I hadn't made in years. It wasn't crying. It wasn't laughter. It was something in between, something holy. That evening, I didn't eat in my room like I usually did. I went to the dining hall. I wore my blue dress, the one with the little pearl buttons down the front. I asked her to pin back my hair. I told her what day she was coming. She teared up when I said it, then quickly wiped her face and said, "Well, she better come hungry because I'm baking something." The day before her arrival, I didn't sleep much. I kept checking my clock. The hours moved slowly, like they knew something was coming and wanted to stretch out the anticipation. I cleaned my room as best I could, dusted the photo frames, straightened my bedspread, laid out a scarf my mother once gave me, and sprayed a bit of rose water on my wrists. At 9:58 a.m. the next morning, I wheeled myself to the front lobby. At exactly 10:02, the door opened, and there she was. Alive. She had the same eyes as my sister. She wore a deep green coat and held a bouquet of white tulips in one hand. Her other hand covered her mouth as tears spilled freely down her cheeks. I opened my arms before either of us spoke, and when she fell into them, we both broke, not because we were sad, but because we were whole. I don't remember how long we hugged. I only remember the warmth of her body against mine, the way her shoulders shook when she cried, and how tightly she held on as if she was afraid I'd vanish if she let go. I wasn't going anywhere, not this time, not ever again. She smelled like lavender and winter wind. Her coat was soft against my cheek. And when we finally pulled back, her eyes searched my face like she was trying to memorize every wrinkle. I let her. She cupped my hand in both of hers and said, "You look just like I imagined." I laughed through tears. "I was worried you'd take one look and run." "Never," she whispered. She brought us both tea and left us alone in the visitors' lounge. It was quiet, just the humming radiator and the ticking wall clock. She took out a photo album from her bag. She had printed copies, the kind you could hold, flip through, stained with fingerprints and emotion. "This is me when I was 3, she said, pointing to a photo of a chubby-cheeked girl in overalls covered in paint. "And this was my high school graduation. I wanted to go into social work, but I ended up teaching special education kids with autism mostly." She flipped to another page. "This is my husband. He's a big softy. And these two are my daughters." "Granddaughters," I blinked. She nodded and smiled. "They know about you. They've always known. I was searching. One wants to meet you. The other, too." I held the album like it was made of glass. Each photo was a glimpse of a life that was supposed to be mine to witness. I should have helped her pick out her first backpack. Should have clapped from the bleachers. Should have been at the wedding. Should have held those babies in my arms. I swallowed the ache rising in my throat. "I missed so much." I said, "You didn't miss me." She replied gently, "You were robbed. And I'm here now. You're here now. That's what matters." We talked for hours. I asked her what her favorite food was as a child. She said French toast with cinnamon. I told her I made that every Saturday morning for Gerald when he was small. She told me she always hated math but loved reading. I told her I used to hide novels in my apron pockets while I worked at the garment factory. We found each other in those details, like building a bridge out of small bricks passed hand to hand. At one point, she got quiet. "There's something else," she said, pulling out a folded sheet of paper. "I got my hands on this, from the hospital records." She slid it across the table. I hesitated, then opened it. It was a birth certificate. My name typed neatly, her date of birth, the name of the hospital. But what stopped me was the box that read, "Mother's consent for adoption." It was blank. She never signed it. I whispered. She shook her head. "The nurse I talked to," she said that's why she remembered the case. She said she always wondered what happened. She knew something was wrong but didn't have the power to stop it. Young unmarried black women weren't supposed to ask questions back then. You were easy to silence. My fingers trembled. "They stole you." She nodded, jaw clenched. "And they told me you left me." I closed my eyes. "I never would have." "I know," she said. "I know now." We sat together in silence after that. Not because we had nothing to say, but because the space between us didn't need to be filled with anything other than presence. Before she left that day, she pulled out a little wrapped box. "I know it's late," she said, "but this was supposed to be for Christmas. I kept it in my bag just in case." I opened it slowly. Inside was a locket, gold, worn but beautiful. She reached over and popped it open. On one side was a tiny photo of her as a baby, probably one her adoptive mother had taken. On the other side, empty. "I thought maybe we could put a photo of you in there," she said, "so I can wear both of us together." I swallowed hard. "You sure you want to?" She looked at me with those same deep brown eyes I'd seen in the mirror all my life and said, "I've never been more sure of anything." When she left that evening, the room felt full for the first time in years. I sat by the window holding the locket in my hand, watching her car drive off. I didn't cry. I just breathed like I'd finally come up for air after decades underwater. Later that night, I took out an old photo of myself, the one from my 40th birthday where I wore a yellow dress and actually smiled. I slipped it into the locket. The next morning, I called Na into my room. "Can I ask a favor?" I said. "Of course. Help me write a letter." She blinked, surprised. "You sure?" I nodded. "I just need to say something simple. Not for a response, just so he knows." I dictated. "Dear Gerald, you are always enough, but you are not the only one. You have a sister. She found me. She didn't take anything from you. She gave me back a piece of myself. I hope one day you want to meet her. If not, that's between you and God. Love, Mama." I sealed the envelope not because I needed closure but because I had opened a door, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of who might walk through it. It's funny how fast everything can change, even when you think life has settled for good. One letter, one name, one visit, and suddenly I'm not just waiting for days to pass anymore. I'm living again. I never thought that would happen in a place like this. She comes every Sunday now. She brings cinnamon pastries and fresh flowers, lilies, roses, sometimes sunflowers, which were her adoptive mother's favorite. She doesn't hide that part of her life, and I respect that. She had two mothers, one who raised her and one who never got the chance. I told her she didn't have to pick between us. Love isn't a pie. It doesn't run out when you slice it. Sometimes she brings her daughters, my granddaughters. One's a tall, shy teenager who talks with her hands and carries a book wherever she goes. The other is louder, funnier, and already taller than me. When she laughs, I swear I hear something old and familiar inside it. Something that sounds like my sister May's laugh from when we were girls, a deep, round joy. The first time they came, I didn't know what to do. I straightened my blankets. I brushed down my hair so many times it started to frizz. Na told me to stop fussing. "They're not here to see perfect," she said. "They're here to see you." When they walked in with her, I nearly forgot how to breathe. The louder one ran up and hugged me before I could even stand. The shy one followed slower, but when she sat next to me and laid her head on my shoulder, I felt like something lost had returned home, without noise, without ceremony, just quietly returned to its rightful place. We took a picture together that day, me in the middle, the girls on either side, and her behind us with her arms wrapped around all three. Na took it with her phone and printed a copy for me the next day. I keep it in a frame beside my bed now, where Gerald's photo used to sit. I didn't take his picture down out of spite. I took it down because I no longer needed to stare at a door that stayed closed. The letter I sent him hasn't gotten a reply. That's all right. I said what I needed to say. He knows. And if someday he decides to come back, I'll be here, with room in my heart but not emptiness. That part's important. One morning, she wheeled me into the garden. It was cold but clear, and the sky had that pale winter blue look that makes the world feel clean. We sat wrapped in blankets, sipping tea from thermoses. "You know," she said, "I never thought this would happen. I imagined 100 ways it could go wrong, that you'd be gone, that you wouldn't want me, that I was too late." "You were right on time," I said. She smiled but didn't speak, just held my hand in hers. "You want to know something strange?" I asked. "Always." I kept dreaming about a little girl for years, a curly-haired baby in a yellow dress. I'd wake up crying sometimes. I thought it was my imagination, just grief showing up in disguise. But it wasn't. "Who's you? You never left me." "Not really." She pressed her forehead to mine and whispered, "And you were always there." In the silence, in the parts of me I couldn't explain. Later that week, she brought me to her home for the first time. It was small but beautiful, pale blue shutters, a wreath on the door, and a porch swing that creaked softly in the wind. Inside, photos lined the mantel, her and her husband on their wedding day, the girls as toddlers. One corner of the living room had a quilt draped over a rocking chair. When I touched it, she smiled. "That was my mom's," she said. "The one who raised me." "She did a good job," I said. "She did. So did you." I hadn't known how much I needed to hear that. I didn't raise her, not in the traditional sense. I didn't pack her lunches or sew her costumes or braid her hair before school, but I gave her life. And now she was giving it back to me. As I sat at their dinner table that night, my first meal outside the nursing home in years, I looked around and realized something I never thought I'd feel again. I belonged. Not in a memory, not in a faded family photo. In the now. In the laughter, in the chatter, in the clink of silverware, and the scent of garlic bread and the sound of someone asking me to pass the salad. I stayed with them that night in the guest room. The bed was soft. The pillow smelled like lavender. And in the morning, when I opened my eyes, sunlight streamed in through the curtains. I wasn't confused or afraid. I was home. It's spring now. I'm still at Rosefield most days, but she has started the paperwork to bring me home full-time. She says we'll take our time, that it has to be safe and right. But I can see it in her eyes. She wants me near, not just out of obligation, but because she finally has her mother. And she's not letting go. Sometimes I still sit by the window and think about the woman I used to be. The one who waited by the door every holiday, hoping for a knock that never came. She was brave. She survived a grief most people never speak of. She deserves peace. And she's finally found it. Because on the day I was left alone on Christmas, I thought the world had forgotten me. But what I didn't know was that my daughter, my real, beautiful, living daughter, was already on her way back to me. She didn't just send a letter. She gave me back my name. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If it touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more real stories like this. Share your thoughts or similar experiences in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care and remember, there's always hope and love waiting around the corner.